With a loss to the New Orleans Pelicans with only two more games left in the season, the Kings have officially been eliminated from the top six of the Western Conference. They are locked into a play-in game. They are tied for the eighth spot right now. If they win out, they'll get that eighth spot because they have the tiebreakers against the Lakers and Warriors. But for a lot of this season, I kept talking about how the Kings were kind of just keeping their heads above water. They were just doing enough to get by, and that at some point down the stretch, I felt like they wouldn't be able to pull out that win that no one expected, and they just wouldn't be able to keep their head above water the entire season. And that's pretty much exactly what happened down the stretch here in the final couple weeks of the season. And it's mainly due to the injuries, but that's part of it. Like the Kings needed to capitalize when they were a little healthier, and they didn't. And so now this is the punishment because this game against the Pelicans, I mean, let's be honest, coming into it, I don't think anyone was confident that the Kings had a very good chance to win this game, other than maybe the fact of probability, statistics being on our side of no way they beat us 5 times in one season. But, it wasn't the worst effort from the Kings in this game. But again, that's kind of part of the problem is sometimes you're just going to lose some games like this, especially not having some of the guys like Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter that we don't have. And that's why we needed to capitalize earlier in the season and put ourselves in a better spot. The first quarter was obviously a disaster, or at least the first part of the first quarter. But to be honest, in previous games against the Pelicans this season, we've seen the Kings get off to starts like the Pelicans did and then just quickly blow the game. And in the NBA, early 20-point leads don't really mean that much, and that's kind of what we saw. The Kings offense was just really struggling early on. Fox didn't get involved a lot in the opening minutes of the game. When he did, missed a three, missed a transition layup, and the Pelicans couldn't miss from three. And throughout the game, the Pelicans couldn't miss from three. CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, just making three-point shot after three-point shot. They combined to go 15 for 24 from the three-point line. The Kings only made 16 as a team. And so the hope was after the Pelicans got out to that blistering start that they would cool down. And they did to some degree, but they stayed pretty hot, especially CJ McCollum. And the Kings came out defensively, putting Domantas Sabonis on Zion, which I think is the right move. And, we saw that against Giannis. It's just like you don't want Sabonis to be picking up fouls. But he is the best option defensively that we have on guys like Zion, like Paolo, like Giannis. And it worked pretty well, not letting Zion get going early, get going in the first half. The problem, of course, comes with Harrison Barnes defending Jonas Valanciunas. And Valanciunas took advantage, not just through scoring the ball, but passing the ball. And the Kings made rotations out to shooters, but it just didn't matter. And the Pelicans made tough shots. And all season long, we've kind of talked about the Kings' three-point defense. And so I thought this was an interesting game because the Kings have gotten unlucky this season in terms of other teams making their three-point shots. And I thought this game was a pretty good example of that. You have Keon Ellis out there who statistically has been one of the best defenders when it comes to defending three-point shooters. Like he has very long arms. He's very good at closing out on shooters. And it just didn't matter. Like he's closing out on Trey Murphy. And Trey Murphy's just making the shots. Like, what are you going to do? I really don't think it was that bad of a game plan from the Kings. I liked the defensive game plan that they came out with. And the Pelicans, they just had the perfect answer by just knocking down three-point shots. And knocking down three-point shots is really the answer to everything in the NBA. On the offensive side of the ball, Barnes got off to a quick start, mainly because he's being guarded by Zion Williamson. We've seen that previously. Barnes kind of has to have good games against the Pelicans to keep us in it and to keep the Pelicans defense honest and Zion honest defensively. And we've been waiting for the Harrison Barnes game. He's been so bad offensively the last, I don't even know how long at this point. So finally, he has a good offensive game. That was good to see. We need him to be better going forward. And so hopefully coming into the, end of the season, the final two regular season games and then the playing games, we need him to be adding something offensively. But other than him, I just thought the Kings, they were making some bad decisions with the ball. And I really think the turnovers are what killed this game for the Kings. They had 14 turnovers, but really it was the type of turnovers that they were having. It felt like they weren't making the simple pass. They weren't just making the pass to the open player. I think you saw Colby Jones, who got minutes early in this game, but only played 3 minutes because he was bad. And that was something I talked about after last game of Colby looks like one for the future. Don't think he's one for right now. And so we've maybe seen the last of him this season, and I think that's okay. But he made, a poor pass when there was an open option. Keegan did the same. Domas did the same. So all these guys turning the ball over or putting their teammates in bad positions. And then Colby fouling a three-point shooter. That's obviously not good. And Colby in 3 minutes, so he fouled the three-point shooter, had 2 turnovers, was a -15 in 3 minutes. Not all on him, but not a good showing. And I think with him, you can see a lot of good. Like the effort is there. He's always right there. Whenever there's a loose ball, whenever there's a rebound, he is right there. But I just don't think he's polished enough right now for what the Kings need. And really, I just think the Kings going after rebounds, going after loose balls, and then the Pelicans coming up with them and punishing, like that was one of the stories of the game. It felt like every loose ball was bouncing to the Pelicans. Every broken play, Valanciunas falls down and the Pelicans get an open dunk because of it. Like just all these plays, these kind of back-breaking plays where it feels like the Kings are maybe about to get a turnover or maybe they're about to get an offensive rebound, and instead the Pelicans are going the other way. We saw it a lot of the Kings crashing the offensive glass and just not being able to come up with the rebound, and the Pelicans punishing on the other end. I mean, for how much the Kings were crashing the offensive glass, I think they just got unlucky. And the Kings' effort in this game was good. The effort, no doubt, was good. I thought the effort defensively was good, but things just did not go our way. And so I just think getting out in transition where it feels like, when you're on the comeback trail, like we were for the entire game because the Pelicans got out to a fast start, the Kings had these opportunities. Like they were chipping away, going on these runs. The Kings went on a 12-0 run when Zion went out at the end of the first quarter to make the score look respectable. And they kept going on these runs, but they couldn't come all the way back. They got within, I think, 2 at one point, but they couldn't come all the way back because there kept being these back-breaking plays that take the wind out of your sails, and these plays where it feels like the crowd's about to explode, and then you throw it away in transition. Or the ball just takes a bad bounce, or the Pelicans hit a deep three. They just could never quite get back into it. Fox did everything he could, especially at the end of the first quarter, trying to get us back into it, taking over offensively. He had a good offensive game, like efficient, 11 for 18, was getting to the free throw line. I thought his balance of scoring was good, and also his balance between scoring and playmaking and making the right pass off of his drives. But then he also, I mean, I've talked about it all season. He is the biggest problem with the Kings transition offense. He's just not a good transition player when it feels like he really should be. And so some of those turnovers from him were just really, really bad. He had 6 turnovers on the game. Outside of those turnovers, he was great. But those turnovers killed us. And I just feel like that's the story of the entire Kings team, of not necessarily everyone being great, but like the Kings doing enough and then just turning the ball over. And it's not just turnovers. Also just missing at the rim in transition, or even just missing at the rim in general, can lead to fast breaks, but especially in transition. Like you had that Keegan play where he just, looks like his awkward self and just goes to the rim and puts it up and barely hits rim. And then Domas is, if he just goes to the rim strong to his right hand and tries to lay it up, either it goes in or Sabonis is there for the rebound. But instead, he takes so long and just looks so awkward and throws it up. And by that point, Valanciunas is getting back into the play, and it was just a super awkward play for Sabonis and Keegan. And then the Pelicans run it back the other way. Davion missed a layup in the second quarter. He went one-on-one, missed a layup. It led to a three. Lyles missed an open three, which led to Najee Marshall getting out and running in transition, and the Kings not picking him up, and he gets a layup. So I really think this game was just, it was lost in the transition game. It was funny on the TNT broadcast. I mean, I hate the Kings being on national television because the commentators just know nothing. It's just funny listening to them talk about how a fast-paced game benefits the Kings, and the Kings want to play fast. And I get why he would think that. I do. But a game that's played at a fast pace is definitely different than a game that's played in in transition and on the fast break, and the Kings are really bad on the fast break. So I think there's a difference there. Sabonis had a really poor first quarter, just not impacting the game, turning the ball over. He was much better in the second quarter, and also the Kings offense in general was a lot better, but Domas got it going inside, and you had Harrison Barnes was kind of the key to the Kings offense. Him getting to the rim, both on the ball and off the ball. He's making things happen. And this is what the Kings need, because they just don't have a lot of guys that are going to create their own shot. And so they need Davion Mitchell to go to the rim. They need Harrison Barnes to be able to create and go to the rim. And he did that. And so on the ball, a lot of it scoring himself. Also creating for others as well, though. And so that was big. But then also his off-ball movement, moving along that baseline. The Pelicans just daring the Kings to try to throw a pass into him on the baseline. And they did, and it worked a lot. And the Kings started playing some pretty solid defense in the second quarter. I thought Trey Lyles defensively was good against Zion. And he also had a great box out on Valanciunas, and he was really good in this game, I thought. Sabonis was very solid defensively, I thought, as well. Keon hit a corner three off good ball movement, and then on the next possession, you had Lyles. I think he was trailing the play, or maybe he was just on the wing, and he pulls a three that I didn't love, but that's Trey Lyles. He's just, when the Kings have the momentum, when it feels like there could be a big momentum play, he's just gonna pull, and he made it, and it was good to see him go, even though it was only 2 for 4. It's still nice to see him get some to go down. I think he's been struggling lately. And the Kings got within 6 by the end of the second quarter. And so that was a big win. And that even came with, at different points of the second quarter, CJ McCollum hitting back-to-back threes on some plays where I felt like the Kings were kind of unnecessarily helping off him. And it was Keon Ellis both times, I think. And then, bounces not going our way, leading to just a Trey Murphy deep three. And so despite those things, the Kings were still in it. They were showing fight. And so from a Kings perspective, I thought the first half was actually pretty good. The third quarter really is where things went downhill, I thought. And it was a combination of a few things. The officiating definitely in that third quarter was very frustrating because, right at the start, you had a missed foul call on Fox. Then they called a travel on Sabonis. They called 2. The first one was not a travel. And he laid it up, and they took the points off the board. He absolutely didn't travel. And then you had Zion getting 2 extremely soft calls. And so you have that, but then also combined with the Kings' poor decision-making, I thought the decision-making in transition was the worst in the third quarter. And so I don't know if it's an effect of the Kings getting frustrated with the officiating, or if it's just, it happened to be the time they got sloppy. I don't know. But I know Fox was frustrated because he, rammed into Dyson Daniels in transition, a clear offensive foul. And then I didn't see it. Threw the ball at the ref, I guess, and got a tech. I don't know. I never saw that. And so that made me wonder, like, is it the frustration with the officials that is getting in the Kings' heads? Because if so, like, they just have to find a way to fight through that, right? Because it's not always going to go your way. Or is that not it? And the Kings are just have been a horrible third quarter team over the past few games. That's pretty likely as well. So, it could definitely be either one. Also, Fox in transition, I mean, I know I've talked about it a lot, but him like ramming into Dyson for no reason, he does that a lot. Like, what game was it? Was it the Spurs game? No, I don't. Chris, what game was it where he just ran into a guy for no reason? It was when Monk went out, or Monk wasn't in the game. So against the Magic, I think, because it wasn't when Monk was injured, but he was having a bad game, so he wasn't in the game, I think. I think I'm correct. And so Fox just kind of runs into a guy, like trying to initiate contact and get a foul call, I guess, but then just turn the ball over. He does that a lot, where he just, instead of taking the clear path that is given to him, he tries to just run into guys. And I don't know if it's to get a foul call or to like try to create space or because he wants to go left. I don't know. But he needs to stop because he turns the ball over so much doing that. But obviously, it wasn't just him, other guys making bad decisions uh, in transition as well. But the Kings stayed in it in the third quarter. Like Keegan hit 2 threes, and then I felt like the Kings started to chuck a little bit too much from three. But you had Sabonis getting a nice and one. The Kings getting into the penalty very early on. They started getting into the paint more. Fox and Sabonis both trying to be aggressive. Barnes also trying to be aggressive. But then it turned into the Zion show. And there were just some points where, like, I don't know what you're supposed to do with when Cody Zeller can just get away with a moving screen. Like, there's nothing you can do there. When Zion just throws himself into you 2 times and gets foul calls, like, there's nothing you can do there. So there were some frustrating moments in that capacity that didn't really have to do with how the Kings were actually defending Zion. Chris Duarte saw minutes in the third quarter because Colby Jones didn't play well, and Sasha missed a couple threes in the first half. So we put Chris Duarte out there, and he just comes in, misses a couple threes, and then doesn't play again. Pelicans started out the fourth hot. CJ, very hot. And the Kings just missing threes, turning the ball over. And right when it seemed like the Pelicans were finally pulling away because they just couldn't miss from three, and then the Kings allowed a couple dunks in a row, and that's kind of when it felt like, okay, they've broken the Kings here. It's over. Right then, Keegan Murray starts knocking down threes. Fox knocks down a three. The Kings offense gets going. Sabonis has a couple nice takes to the rim. Fox, a nice take to the rim. And they got some stops. They forced Zion to come back into the game. And then they let Zion score once. And then at that point, I was just saying, like, just make somebody beat you from the 3-point line. When you're trying to make these comebacks that are very unlikely, it was definitely still possible, but they needed the Pelicans to miss from 3-point range. I think they got within 8 with like 2 minutes. And they did that. They forced the Pelicans to shoot threes, and then Trey Murphy, he buried one. But they just had to live with that because you have to get desperate and give up something in those scenarios, and you definitely cannot let Zion beat you inside. Davion played a lot of minutes. He played a lot in the fourth, in the closing lineup, and he continues to be really good offensively. He got lucky on a bounce on a three, but he went 2 for 2 from three, 5 for 8 from the field. His assist numbers have been going up since Malik Monk went out, and that's exactly what we needed. His drives have been going up since Monk went out. Need that. And he just keeps putting together solid game after solid game. So he's been solid off the bench. Lyle's solid off the bench. Len always solid off the bench. And then I don't really know why we went away from Kessler Edwards. Like, I don't know. I thought he was playing well. And then, but we went to Colby Jones fine for a little bit. But, like, he's a rookie. We don't need to keep playing him this season. And so why do we go back to Chris Duarte instead of Kessler Edwards? I don't really know. But really, it's we have three solid guys off the bench, and then we need to find a fourth. Sasha Vezenkov seems like the most likely, but also not the one that seems to fill the role that the Kings are looking for, if that makes any sense. Like not the guard or, like two or three defensively that it seems like they want. But Sasha got 11 minutes and went 1 for 4 from three. Just when Sasha's on the court, compared to really any other options off the bench behind him, I feel so much more calm. When Duarte's out there, it could be great, it could be awful. When Kessler Edwards is out there, a little less so. But when Sasha's out there, I feel like it's really unlikely he's gonna make dumb plays. And he just hasn't been able to get going since coming back from injury, really. But I think he's the guy that needs to play the most out of the three guys off the bench that I named, because he's the most likely that's going to help us offensively, and that's really where the Kings have been struggling. Obviously, this game, a high-scoring game, but just in general. And I am very, very confident in Sasha getting a bigger role and being a lot better next season. That's just something that I am super, super confident in. The Kings themselves shot 42% from three, so they shot well, but just tough to overcome the 55%. But they took 38 threes, and so that's a lot less than the last few games where they're taking like 58 and 52, 51, whatever it was. I mean, I thought the half-court offense looked better than it has for a few games now, and Fox being more involved in taking better shots, I think, was a part of that. And him also being able to get to the free throw line is huge. And just when he's driving, that opens things up for Sabonis inside, and so he can get it going inside. But it's really Harrison Barnes finally finding his offense that rejuvenated the Kings' offense here. Keegan had a slow start and made a few threes late in the fourth to try to help that comeback. But with him, they were just, you can just see those awkward moments where he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do. Like when he gets into the mid-range, I feel like there are so many times where he could just pull up and like he creates the space, but then there are a few times where he just got his feet wrong. And then obviously I talked about that kind of awkward play in transition. And so I think those are just the learning moments for him. Keon also, I think, had some learning moments, but on the defensive end, he just had some moments off the ball where his decision making wasn't the best. And that's, that can happen to anyone, where like he's still a very good defender, but he can make some mistakes off the ball just in terms of decision making, when to help, who to help off of. The Kings now are on the second night of a back-to-back against the Phoenix Suns. A huge game. If they win this, they would still obviously have to go against Portland in the final game, but that Portland game should be a lot easier, hopefully. They just got to win these last two games to stay out of the 9-10 play-in spot. And there's a chance that they could retain it by going one-on-one. The Pelicans play both the Warriors and the Lakers. So if the Pelicans beat Kings, Warriors, Lakers, then we're good if they beat, all three of us, as long as we get one game. But obviously we don't want to rely on the help of other teams. So obviously some tough scheduling here, where second last game of the season is a back-to-back. I would think that they wouldn't do that just for like the last week of the season, there being any back-to-backs is a little weird, because you would think the reason that they put us against the Suns and the Pelicans is because they thought there was a possibility that we were close to them in the standings, and they were right. The schedule makers were right, and they were, they're good at their jobs in that sense. Just seems a little weird to have a back-to-back now as opposed to just putting a back-to-back earlier in the season at some point. But still, at home, so no excuses. There's no travel. The Suns have won the last two games, and so, the season series is 2-2. Obviously, that one massive comeback that the Suns had in the fourth quarter. I think one of the keys whenever we're playing against the Suns is to limit Yusuf Nurkic inside. You can't let him get offensive rebounds. You can't let him get going early inside because then, I mean, they obviously have their big three. If you let Nurkic get going, then it's impossible. And also with some of the shooters they have, you have to be able to limit offensive rebounds. You don't want the ball coming out like it did to Trey Murphy deep from three. You can imagine Eric Gordon being in the same role there, hitting deep threes. The Kings haven't played the Suns too much when they've had all of their guys, because I remember Bradley Beal getting injured early in one of the games that they played, and then I think he was out a couple of the other ones. And so that probably changes matchups, but also we weren't starting Keon Ellis. So it kind of goes both ways there. I wonder if we'll see. I don't know. I don't know how the Kings are going to come out defensively. You could see Harrison Barnes against Kevin Durant, and then Keegan on Booker, Keon on Beal. But then, I don't know. I feel like Keon Ellis being in this lineup gives us a lot more versatility. Obviously, now you could put Keegan on KD, but I don't know. I feel like the Kings like putting Harrison Barnes on KD, so it'll be interesting. But our fate for this, top 8 seed now, it's in our hands. And so just got to take care of business in these last 2 games. So for now, that is it for this episode of the Roller Report. And I will see you guys tomorrow to recap that game against the Suns. Peace.